of your labor. Blessings and prosperity will be yours, says Psalms 128:2. Good morning and welcome to Tandem Radio. This is your host bringing you the good news on business. My name's Glenn DeLakian, here every Saturday morning at 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. Just excited to be here to talk about God's Word and to talk with special guests that can bring us some unique insights into various businesses and professions from all different walks of life. If you're tuning in for the first time, I'm a entrepreneur, always been that way, always been involved in businesses and always enjoy the acclimation of business, the growing of business and selling of business, anything to do with business world. God's blessed me with that and been excited to be able to talk about that for almost 3 years now on the radio and bringing you the good news on business. We have two simple goals on this show. The first one is to help business-related people or even business owners realize that God wants to be involved in your business life as well as every aspect of your life. Matter of fact, there are many scriptures written in the Word that pertain directly to business and can help you in your business life. So our first goal is to point you to God's scripture and how it will impact your business. Our second goal is to bring you unique guests each week that have insights into different either technologies or areas of business or have different levels of expertise or experiences that we can hopefully get some gold nuggets from those folks that you can take right to work with you on Monday morning and use as part of your practical day-to-day business application. And we find ourselves some dynamic guests who have unique experiences, and we have a lot of fun with them throughout the show. And of course, it's a Holy Spirit-led show, so we never know where God's going to take us. But again, those are our two primary goals, and hopefully you, as someone interested in business in general, will get a lot out of what we're going to talk about today. And of course, we're called The Good News on Business, but each week we have a specific theme. And this week, our theme is mechanical technology, and our guest is Steve Lang, who's been in the automotive aftermarket business for many, many years, not only owned his own business, but now continues on as a professional in that field, and we're going to talk more about Steve and to Steve in a moment. But before we go there, let's get the scriptures out today so that we can know what God's foundation is for this show. Sometimes, I read these scriptures and I say, boy, that ties right into what we're doing. And sometimes I say, God, what are you trying to tell me here? But you know what? By the end of the show, it always ties in, and we've been blessed that way. So Deuteronomy 2:7, the Lord your God has blessed you in all the work of your hands. Job 8:8-9. Ask the former generation and find out what their ancestors learned. For we were born only yesterday and know nothing, and our days on earth are but a shadow. 1 Thessalonians 4:11. And to make it your ambition to lead a quiet life, you should mind your own business and work with your hands, just as we told you to. So on that note, we're talking today about mechanical technology. When I read that in Steve Lang's resume, I said, or bio I should say, I said, boy, that's interesting, what's that? But then when I read on, I realized what he was talking about. Steve Lang, who's been in the automotive business just about his whole life, his family, his grandfather, I believe, and then his father had a family-owned business that he got involved in, eventually owned and ran. But let me introduce you to Steve Lang, our guest for today. Good morning, Steve, and welcome.
Good morning.
It's good to have you here today. Steve, introduce yourself to our audience. Tell them a little bit about yourself.
Well, my name is Steve Lang, and I have been in the automotive industry my entire life. About age 14 approximately, I started actually working for a wage for my grandfather at that time.
There you go.
I'm third generation in the business.
Wow.
Went away to college intending to become an industrial arts teacher.
Oh, okay.
And during that time in college, I actually changed over. They introduced a new program called mechanical technology, which was basically mechanical engineering technology.
Right.
And I transferred into that program seeing that the industrial arts was starting to actually go away even back in the 70s. A lot of the schools were getting rid of it.
Right.
And I figured that if there was something that was going to be taught, it was going to be at more of an engineering type of a level. So I went ahead and got my Bachelor of Science degree in Mechanical Technology, and all with the intention of going out into industry. And my father's had a manager who decided to leave, and so my father offered me the job as the manager of the store at that time.
Okay.
So, and I've been there ever since.
So, third generation in the automotive business, and of course, our God is a God of multi-generations, and I think it ties in great to that Job scripture. But that's interesting. So you've seen a lot. You've been in it for 14 since you were 14 years old, and in a technology that you call, I'm sorry, in a business that you call aftermarket auto parts, correct?
That's correct.
Right. So, I think most people have a feel for what they think is the automotive industry and auto parts industry, but I think there's a lot of nuances there, and of course, certainly a lot of changes. So let's talk about that for a minute. I'm sure you've seen a lot of changes since college alone in the automotive industry, but let's talk specifically about the parts industry. How's that parts industry changed for you over these decades?
Well, it's actually changing virtually every day. The Northeast United States is the last holdout for what I would call the traditional automotive aftermarket,
Really?
where you have independent parts stores selling to garages that work on the cars. The rest of the country pretty much has gone to either warehouse-owned stores or what we refer to in our industry as two-step, which are some of the smaller warehouses that decided that they could do a better job by going direct out to the shops,
Right.
and thus eliminating the parts store. I said probably because of our population density here in the Northeast,
Right.
there's still a very large percentage of independent parts stores.
So when you started in the parts industry, when your grandfather had it and then your father had the business, basically what was the progression? A manufacturer like a Ford or General Motors, they made the parts, correct?
Actually, the aftermarket is a group of manufacturers. In some cases, they will make for the original equipment car,
Oh, okay.
but it's actually, they're pretty much independents. It's a separate division, if you will,
Right.
that's making parts to go through the aftermarket parts chain, which is not the original equipment parts
Right.
chain, such as through the car dealer, Ford dealer, Chevy dealer, or whatever.
Does the dealership have the same parts as the parts store, or are they made by different people?
In some cases, they're the same, but in many cases, they are different.
Okay.
There are what they refer to as OE parts, or original equipment parts, and then there are aftermarket parts. Today, the lines are becoming blurred because the same manufacturers are making for both.
Okay.
And in a lot of cases, the part that you buy from the car dealership isn't even the original part that went on the car at the assembly line.
Okay.
It's an aftermarket part.
Interesting.
So the lines aren't quite as clear as you would think they are.
Okay. So back in the day, you had this retail store. Somebody wanted to fix their own car, right? They would come to you and buy the parts. But you also mentioned that maybe the local garage who was fixing cars for people, they come to you as well and get the parts.
That was our primary business. About 80% of our business was the professional mechanic.
Okay.
And people that were working on cars. In addition to that, approximately 20% were what we would refer to as the do-it-yourself market.
Okay.
And there are now businesses that are catering to that do-it-yourself market, but it's really become more of an accessory and a car care type of a business because the cars have become so complicated
Right.
that short of an oil change, most people can't repair their own cars. They
Sure.
can do some service work, but they can't really do repairs.
Right, which we'll talk about that more in the next segment. So again, just want to get the foundation down because you had the store, and of course, even back in the day, there were independently owned stores, and there were more the chain stores, correct? These people would go to the store and either buy over the counter, which you're saying is about 20% of the business at the time, but 80% of your business was maybe out the back door, and I don't mean that in a negative way, but a local gas station, for example, calling you up and say, hey, I need this widget or carburetor or alternator, I'm not a car guy, alternator, send it on over.
Absolutely.
Okay. And when people do that, back in the day, right, like say 20, 30 years ago, it seemed to me like you paid to do your own car repairs.
Well, it still does if you can do it.
Right.
The problem is that it's become so complicated that you don't have the diagnostic tools available.
Right.
I mean, before you could do a simple tune-up on a car and get it running better.
Mm-hmm.
Today, you have to have literally thousands of dollars worth of equipment to do a diagnostic on a vehicle in order to determine what your next step is going to be.
Right, right. So, in essence, we've all seen a lot of automotive
Yes.
changes in the automotive industry, and I think, and I want to talk about this in the next segment, there's a lot of front of houses changes that we've seen, and obvious things. You know, we open our hood, we see a difference under the hood, but apparently there's a lot of back of house things that have changed as well in your industry, correct?
Absolutely. One of the big advantages that we had as a business is that we had a complete machine shop. And we did engine rebuilding and everything that was related to the mechanical components. And of all of the stores, I call on approximately 60 traditional jobbers now.
Right.
And of them, there are only maybe 2 or 3 that still offer any machine services at all. They're very limited. And I have one traditional machine shop left because basically, regardless of what the public might think, the cars are built better. And they don't need the engine rebuilding and things along that line like they used to.
Right. So there's actually been some positive advantages of moving forward. I think people, I would think, I mean, I've noticed cars, I think, lasting longer, running better, all those types of things. So I think that we tend to think, right, naturally that, oh, things from the old days were made so much better and all that. But we'll talk about that more after the break. The old versus the new. You're listening to Tandem Radio. This is your host, Glenn DeLakian, here every Saturday morning at 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, bringing you the good news on business. And I'd like to welcome not only our regional listeners, but also our national and international listeners, because there are many people who listen to our show on the internet at tandemradio.com. You can check out the show every Saturday at tandemradio.com. Plus, you can use that website as a resource. We have archived shows there. We have links to our guests' website. We have all types of consultative information there. And of course, you can contact us and ask questions at info at tandemradio.com. We'd love to hear from you. Just send in your questions and we will do our best to answer those questions. We'll certainly pray about your business and do whatever we can to help you move forward. Stay tuned. We have a lot more right after this. Welcome back to Tandem Radio. This is your host, Glenn DeLakian, and just excited to be here on another Saturday, another glorious day of the Lord, who helps us every day to just get out of bed, take a breath, and do the things we need to do. And with that in mind, we are the good news on business, and as we do each week, our goal is to bring you God's Word and show how that applies to your business, and also to bring you guests each week that can give us nuggets from their experience and help us in our businesses. The scriptures for this week, Deuteronomy 2:7, the Lord your God has blessed you in all the work of your hands. Job 8:8 and 9, ask the former generation and find out what their ancestors learned, for we were born only yesterday and know nothing, and our days on earth are but a shadow. And then 1 Thessalonians 4:11, and to make it your ambition to lead a quiet life, you should mind your own business and work with your hands, just as we told you. So we're here today with Steve Lang, who is in the automotive aftermarket business. He's been a professional in that business since age 14, originally involved in his grandfather's business that transitioned to his father, to him. He owned it for a while and then went on into his current career. And on that, Steve, again, I want to thank you for being here this morning.
Thank you.
Steve, let's talk about the business, the store itself. Let's go back in time a little bit. Obviously, your grandfather started the store, right? Then your father eventually took it over and owned it, and then you eventually took it over. So let's talk about that transition. Your grandfather starts this business. Was your father in there the day when he started?
Pretty much. My grandfather actually started the parts business 1946 when he got back from the war.
Oh, okay.
Prior to that, he ran a service station, gas station. They had gas pumps and so on. My father worked for him in the gas station, and he actually worked at the gas station while my grandfather was away.
Oh, okay.
And so when he returned, he decided he wanted to go into the parts business. And so when my father graduated from college, he actually went to aeronautical school because
Really?
there weren't any good technical schools at the time.
Okay.
And he went into business with my grandfather, his father at the time.
Right.
And then my grandfather retired, I'm going to say around 1970 approximately, which is when I went away to school.
Okay.
So my father took over at that time. And when I got out of school, I went in as his manager,
Right.
and continued until around 1990. I purchased the business from my father.
Okay.
And seeing the changes that were happening in the business and changes that were happening in my family, I decided and I had an opportunity to sell the business and took advantage of that. And so about 1995, I sold the business.
Okay.
We had been there for 49 years.
There you go.
Didn't quite meet
Make
the
50.
50-year mark. I was a little disappointed because I had big plans for the 50 year.
Oh,
but
really?
Anyway, at 49 years, I sold the business. And the short story is I went to work for one of my suppliers at that time.
Okay.
And so now I'm in the warehousing business.
Now this shows us a good transition here. Was there a plan in mind? I mean, did your grandfather start the business, you think, saying someday my son's going to take this over?
Absolutely.
Yeah? Okay.
Absolutely.
See, I think that's changed. I mean, I know back in my father's day, 'cause my father was in World War II as well. When he came out, he got in the he was in the dry clean business when he went in, but he restarted when he got out. But I think they built the business back then thinking that my kids and my grandkids and my great-grandkids will be running this business someday. And I think that changed somewhere along the way. You know, the last 20, 30 years, people don't necessarily have that. They have the concept of starting a business and selling it, you know. But it's interesting. So you think in your grandfather's mind he had this, someday my son will take this over?
Yes, and back then, the businessman in town was looked up to.
Right.
They were considered the pillars of the community, if
right.
you will. And it was something that you just went from generation to generation with a small business like we had.
Right.
And that has changed.
Mm.
The small businessman really isn't as influential, if you will, in the community as he used to be,
Right.
because the large businesses have kind of come in and taken over.
Mm.
And that's one of the big changes that I've seen.
Now, when your father took over the business, and he ran it for a while, did he have it in his heart or mind to bring you back in, or was that just something that happened?
You know, it's just something that happened.
Mm.
I assumed the whole time I was growing up that I would end up going into the business.
Right, okay.
I was never pressured into doing it. It was a conscious decision on my part. But when I went away to school, I had no intention of going into the business. I was going to be a teacher.
There you go.
And that changed.
Right.
Circumstances changed. And the automotive business has a tendency to do that. It pulls you back in. If you look
There's
at
an
the
allure
people
there.
that are in our business, most of us have been involved with it since we were children.
Right, right.
And we can't seem to get away from it.
There you go. Well, it's a very unique industry. Were you drawn by the cars? I mean, were cars exciting to you, or just the business itself was interesting?
As a teenager, I was.
Yeah.
I was really drawn more by my mechanical ability, if you will.
Okay.
The machine shop is where my heart is.
Okay.
I still would have liked to have continued that, but that part of the business has just changed so drastically that really wasn't an option.
So you had a machine shop in the back of the parts store.
Yes.
What did you do in that machine shop?
We rebuilt engines.
Right. Which
We
is
did.
almost unheard of today, right?
Really is, and except for industrial and marine and a few, most of the engines are almost not rebuildable anymore, and they last so long that most of them don't have to be.
Right, right.
There is a niche market for the collector cars and so on, but it's very limited. We did cylinder head repair, we did all kinds, anything, virtually anything that had to do with the engine or mechanical components on the vehicle. We even rebuilt starters and alternators. We had electricians that did our own rebuilding, and now that's virtually unheard of. There are very few custom rebuilders anymore.
Now, how did you adapt to the signs of things changing? I mean, you know, granted, I mean, think about, I always, when I think of cars, I think about the, fuel injection and carburetors. You know, at some point, some guys hung on to that carburetor business and eventually went away, right? Because they went to fuel injectors, there's no more carburetors. You know, kind of like the buggies and the buggy whips, you know? So you must have saw that coming. How did you prepare for that?
one of the ways I prepared for it was selling the business. I mean, that period of time in 1995 when I sold was really a transition period with the automobile, because they were going to the onboard diagnostics,
Right.
and there was a big change there. I continue to get training. I've never stopped getting training
Right.
from day one. And anytime I get an opportunity to go to a class, whether it be a business class, a class on Bible study, or a class on, the technical end of the automotive part of it, I still, to this day, seek out technical training.
Well, I know in the next segment I want to talk about repairing cars and where to go and all those types of things, because we all have cars, or most of us do. Certainly in some of my business I have trucks and all that, and I know there's all different layers there, so we're going to come back to all that. So your father transitioned, took the business over from your grandfather. Was there a plan in place to do that, or was it just something that happened? Your grandfather said one day, I'm done, you're taking over, or was there a buy-sell? I mean, how'd that work out?
It was a buy-sell agreement,
Okay.
over approximately a 10-year period,
Okay.
which is what I had, that same type of an agreement with my father.
Okay.
And that's actually one of the problems with multi-generational businesses, is that when you start a business, especially, coming home from World War II, where my grandfather started, he started the business with virtually nothing.
Right.
And so he built that business, and then he sold it to my father, who really started over,
Right.
and the business bought itself again. And then by the time it was, to me, it was the third time the business was trying to buy itself. So it was, and this is something that I've talked to other friends of mine that have been in business, hardware stores or whatever, and they've all run into the same kinds of problems with trying to transition from generation to generation through a business.
And I think there's important lessons to be learned there, one of which we've talked about on this show before, is exit plans and strategies. And I think it's so important, especially with family involved, that everybody have some type of plan in place. So if you're listening today and you're in a family-owned business, I know sometimes there's maybe one family member says, I can't wait to get out. There's one family member says, I want to dig in deeper, and some are indifferent. But it's never too soon to talk about an exit plan. It can often be too late. But if I can encourage our listeners out there, if you're in a family-owned business, you may want to sit down and talk to your family partners and say, what's our plan here? What's our long-term goal? Are we in this for the next generation and the next generation, or are we just going to get this to a point and sell it? And I think it's important to know that. And of course, be in on that discussion, because if there's a key player that wants to go in one direction, everybody else wants to go in another direction, that could be a dangerous place to be. So if you're listening out there and you own a family-owned business and you're not sure where you're going, or maybe you're just starting a business, it's never too soon to talk about the exit strategy. In business, I always believe that you should start with the end in mind, and where you want to go with this and how you want to end up can make so much smoother transition when time comes. Because I've seen so many family businesses. As a matter of fact, I spoke at a conference last year where a guy owned one of the largest family-owned businesses in the country, and the whole thing went down the tubes when they decided that a couple of the partners who were family members wanted to get out, and there was such a rough transition getting them out. But keep that in mind as we continue to talk today with Steve and talk about business in general, and as we bring it back around to mechanical technology, which I thought was interesting. So you're listening to Tandem Radio. This is your host, Glenn DeLakian, here every Saturday morning at 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, talking to you about the good news on business and bringing God's Word to apply to our businesses on a daily basis. We have so much more to cover today as we discuss with Steve Lang, the automotive industry and mechanical technology. Don't forget, tandemradio.com. Tandemradio.com is a place to go for many resources, and you can see our archive shows there. You can touch base with our guests there. You can just learn so many things. Of course, the business column I write every month is there. It's published and distributed to 66,000 readers, but it's also there on the website, and so much more to come. Tandem Radio, stay tuned. We'll be back right after this. Welcome back to Tandem Radio. This is your host, Glenn DeLakian, here every Saturday morning at 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, bringing you the good news on business. Again, our scriptures for today: the Lord your God has blessed you in all the work of your hands. That's Deuteronomy 2:7. And in Job, a book we don't quote that often in this show, Job 8 and 9, ask the former generation and find out what their ancestors learned, for we were born only yesterday and know nothing, and our days on earth are but a shadow. And 1 Thessalonians 4:11, and to make it your ambition to lead a quiet life, you should mind your own business and work with your hands, just as we told you to. Now, we're talking about generational, transitions and all that. Just to put that to bed, the Job scripture here: ask the former generation and find out what their ancestors learned, for we were born only yesterday and know nothing, and our days on earth are but a shadow. Where'd you find yourself? Did you find yourself finding a lot of wisdom in what your grandfather and father did, or were you one of those independent guys that said, oh, that's the old, I want to bring in all the new?
Not really. I think that I pretty much have been very traditional.
Okay.
I obviously made changes as technology changed. I put a computer system in to handle inventory and so on. So from a technology standpoint, definitely made changes. But my grandfather, my father, and I were all believers.
Okay.
And we all had very much of a consistent, traditional Christian type of an outlook.
Right.
Christian worldview, if you will.
Sure.
And our motivation, if you will, for being in business was to do the best job we could.
Right.
And treat people fairly.
After you sold the business, were you able to lean on your father for wisdom and decisions as you went forward?
That was actually a very difficult time.
Really?
Because it was in the middle of my trying to buy the business from my father that happened.
Okay.
And he had to make some lifestyle changes also as a result of that, because they were depending on some residual income from the business and so on.
Right.
So it made a big change, and they were very cooperative. Both my mother and father were involved with the business. My mother was a bookkeeper,
Right.
and she probably ran the business.
Right.
But no, we were always about, like I said, doing the best job that we could, being honest with people, and trying to be very consistent.
Okay.
And
Let's be practical and talk about the practical side of automotive. I mean, I am, in my case, I'm not handy with cars. I need my car to be reliable. If I come out and there's a flat tire, I'm picking up the phone. I mean, it's just the way I am. And I own several businesses. I just value my time in that respect. I'm not saying that's right or wrong. It's just what I do. When it comes to automotive repair, obviously, I drive a Lexus. I open the hood, it looks like a picture painted in there. I mean, you hardly can find a dipstick, to check your oil, which I do check once on. But seriously, it's changed so much. What do people do today? I mean, does it make sense to fix your own cars anymore, or are you better off with the lube shops and all that stuff?
in most cases, the average person cannot work on their own car. Somebody that's very mechanical might be able to put a set of brakes on or change the air filter, do an oil change, although some of the cars you can't even do an oil change on anymore. That has definitely changed, and the important thing that I see is to have a relationship with a local repair garage or whatever and use them consistently.
Right. Is there a big difference between letting the dealership service your car and letting the local guy service your car?
There can be a significant cost difference. The dealership, I don't want to badmouth the OE industry. However, they have a tendency to tell the consumer that if they don't come back there, their car won't be covered by warranty, which absolutely is not the case. As long as the shop that you use is using quality parts that meet the OE manufacturer's specifications, the warranty continues. You just have to have records. Records of oil changes, records in order to continue your warranty.
And I think a lot of people don't realize that in leases either. When they have a lease a car, they automatically assume that everything they need done, they need to take back to the dealership, and that's not necessarily true, right?
absolutely not true. Although some leasing companies require authorization for repairs. It just depends on how the contract is written.
Right.
But general service work, that would be the case. But I've also found that in many leases, the people don't have their cars serviced. They just run it through the
Right.
term of the lease and turn it back in with very little, if any, service work ever done on it.
Yeah. Well, I don't lease my cars. I don't believe in it, but I know a lot of people do, and you got to be careful with that, because if you do turn the car in and the engine's blown or something, I mean, that's extreme or whatever. You're
Yes.
paying for it, so you got to be careful. What about oil changes? 3,000 miles, 5,000 miles, 10,000 miles? What is it? I mean, you hear all kinds of numbers from people.
You have to go by the manufacturer's recommendation. Right now, most of them are 7,500 miles.
Oh, really?
But many of the newer cars are using synthetic oils. The key there is when you're using synthetic oils and these long oil change intervals, you want to use quality filters. So there are many different levels of parts out there,
Right.
and it's important for the consumer to be aware of that. I personally run 7,500 to 10,000 miles, but that's 3 months.
Right.
So, but I also use a full synthetic oil.
Right.
So you really, a lot of people, even though the cars say that you can go 7,500, they still do them at 3,000 or 5,000.
Right. What is synthetic oil? I mean, does that mean there's less oil in there and something made up to put in? I mean, what is synthetic oil?
Yeah, the synthetics are additives. They're, I don't know the chemistry of it,
Right.
but they're definitely synthetic polymers and so on. And there is some of that in all oils. There are what they call synthetic blends, which have a certain percentage of man-made additives, if you will. And then there are full synthetic oils, which have virtually no petroleum products
really?
at all in them.
So, I mean, would we be, and I know it's a weird question, but would we be less oil dependent if we use synthetic oil in our cars, in all our cars?
The amount of oil that's used for lubricating oil, I don't think would make a significant
Oh, really?
difference.
Okay,
Yeah,
interesting.
it's so small in comparison. I mean, you use 500 gallons of gas to 5 quarts of oil, so you're really not.
Right, no, I'm just curious, because I always heard of synthetic oil and that it's better for the cars, and obviously the longer intervals and all that stuff, but I never quite understood why.
There are now, I'm saying reconditioned, that's not, but there are oils now that are more green, if you will. They're recycled oils,
Right.
and there are bio oils, bio-based oils, and the synthetic oils, so there are choices. So,
I mean, I think one of the reasons why people take their cars back to dealerships, for example, for repairs, is, concerned that it gets done right and they don't have to deal with it and they have somebody yell at it if something happens. How do you tell a good mechanic, like an average place off the street, how do you know if it's good or bad?
really have to go by your own experience with them. If they've treated you fair, if you take the car there, they fix it properly and it works. If you have a problem, you take it back to them and they do take care of it. That's the biggest problem that I see in what we're referred to as the aftermarket business, where you take the car to the garage and they do a repair and you have a problem with it, rather than take it back to them, a lot of people will automatically take it back to somebody else because they didn't know what they were doing. But you could change a fan belt on a car and the car gets a flat tire and the customer blames the garage for the flat tire. That's just the way our industry works.
Right, exactly. I understand. Now, of course, there's also people who are unscrupulous in the automotive industry, like in any industry, but sometimes automotive industry, we kind of make fun of used car dealers and all that kind of stuff, Do you see a lot of that still going on?
I don't see it only because I don't deal with it at that level. As working for a warehouse distributor now, I'm selling to the parts store, so I really don't see what's happening at the consumer level so much.
Okay.
The only thing I have to go by is third-party information, from what stories that my customers tell me.
Right.
There is some of that goes on, but I don't think it's terribly widespread. I think a lot of the consumers are becoming a lot more educated.
Because they can go online now and see videos of how to do everything. Right?
Absolutely, absolutely. And they can check prices, they can do anything they want on the internet.
What about the internet? Is that impacting your business a lot?
Absolutely.
People
Yeah.
buying a lot of parts online?
Particularly in the accessory business and the performance business, a lot of that is now almost exclusively online. But even some of the shops and mechanics are starting to buy parts online if they can save a couple dollars.
What about the performance business? I mean, I know that's a whole nother topic to talk about, but what if someone has a car that they lease, for example? Can they put performance parts on there?
As far as I know, they would be having a problem with their lease agreement.
Right.
Yeah.
Because they're changing physically the
Yeah,
vehicle.
you're making changes. Most lease people aren't going to
Right.
bother doing that kind of a
So,
thing.
so people are putting performance. I always got a kick out of people building these big muscle cars. The Spiegelman's the same everywhere you go, but yet they make the car go 160 miles an hour
Yes.
instead of 120. And I guess that's still a market that's cranking out there. We'll talk more about that after the break. We're talking with Steve Lang, who's an automotive aftermarket professional, been in the business for many years, not only owning his own business, but also now transitioning into working with others. And we're here to talk about the good news on business, and today's theme, mechanical technology. You're listening to Tandem Radio. This is your host, Glenn DeLake, here every Saturday morning at 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. Again, don't forget to check us out on Facebook. Just go on Facebook, type in Tandem, Tandem Radio, Tandem Radio, and we'll come up. And you can post things there. You can post about your business, because many people look at that at Facebook. And if you want to get the word out about your business, it's a good place to post. And you can also listen to us at tandemradio.com, anywhere you are in the globe. Stay tuned. We have a lot more right in the next segment. Well, welcome back to Tandem Radio. This is your host, Glenn DeLake, just excited to be here another Saturday morning talking about God's Word and your business. The good news on business is what we're all about here. And our scriptures today, Deuteronomy 2:7, the Lord your God has blessed you in all the work of your hands. God blesses us when we put our hands to work, for sure. Job 8:8-9, ask the former generation and find out what their ancestors learned. For we were born only yesterday and know nothing, and our days on earth are but a shadow. It's so important that the older teach the younger. I know we lose that sometimes in these generations, but it's so important to tap into the older from the younger to learn and be mentored. And of course, 1 Thessalonians 4:11. And to make it your ambition to lead a quiet life, you should mind your own business and work with your hands, just as we told you to. I want to talk briefly, Steve, about the subject of working with your hands. You've been doing that. Machine shop is something you were very interested in. You studied mechanical technology back in your school days at college. It seems to me more and more that this working with your hands is kind of looked down on by people and is almost kind of becoming a dying industry. But yet, I spoke at a conference not too long ago with one of the largest manufacturers in the country, and he said that there's a comeback starting to come around, and young people need to realize, especially, that there are great careers out there, mechanics and robotics and in many other areas, where people working with their hands can really have an impact and have a good, solid career, and they get paid well for it. Matter of fact, I heard somebody recently said in Europe that plumbers and electricians actually make more money than doctors and lawyers. We know that sometimes that's the case here. But what are your thoughts on that? This mechanical technology is what you grew up in, and working with your hands in a machine shop. Where do you see that going for the youth today?
I've really seen a big change in the education system. The stigma of somebody going to a vocational school is going away, because the vocational schools have stepped up, and they're much more technical than they used to be. A young man can come out of a vocational program, automotive technology program, and then do some post work, such as going to a Lincoln Tech or a community college that has an automotive technology program. And somebody that comes through those programs, they get factory training and so on. And as a Class A mechanic, you can do very well. I mean, these young men that aren't necessarily college material, but are still very intelligent, they just don't like the education scene,
Right.
can work with their hands and do very well.
Well, it's good to know that there seems to be a change in that stigma, and that because I know for many years, they dropped wood shop in schools, they dropped auto shop in school. I remember when I went to school, we had all those things, and it seemed like the culture just changed so much. And again, like you said, people look down on people who got their hands dirty for work, but yet now I think hopefully there's more of an appreciation, especially with so many people being out of work. There's more of appreciation for people in that who are able to work with their hands and who like to work with their hands. I mean, there are certain people out there that are made that they like to work with their hands and they want to create things or build things or work on things. And I know plenty of auto mechanics that like digging into an engine, you know, and we sometimes who don't have that talent, like in my case, I don't want to mess up your car, I wouldn't work on your engine, you know. Sometimes people can look down on that thing, but obviously God respects people who work with their hands, because I think all work, if God gives you a calling for it, all work is good.
Absolutely. And if you take into consideration the cost of a college education today,
Yeah.
and you subtract that from your lifetime income, people that are in manual trades can actually track pretty close to a lot of college graduates.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
And that's a great point. You know, I think you got to do the math. And you have come out of school with $200,000 in debt from college, and you got to pay that off over the next 20 years. That's a big nut. Just think, if you didn't pay that $200,000, you put that as a down payment on your house, and you became an auto mechanic and whatever, any kind of working with your hands type of thing. You're right. You could end up way ahead of the curve on that.
And really, more and more, we depend on those people. You depend on the tradesmen, because the people that are doing their own work,
Right.
just, like I said, that education is gone. So
Yeah, well, hopefully they'll bring that back around. Now, obviously, you've been, you said you grew up in a Christian home, you've been a Christian all your life, and praise God for that. How has your faith in Christ impacted your career?
basically, it's probably my motivation for the way that I go to market, if you will, because I'm more interested in building relationships with my customers, doing the right thing for them, and being as honest as possible with them, and that so they can depend on me. They can talk to me, know that that information's not going to go somewhere else, and based on Christian principles, if you will, not rules and regulations, but principles. And it's something that I struggled with, because there was a point when I was actually a candidate for the ministry. And because I decided I probably wanted to get out of this thing. And then I started looking at mission work and so on. And it was a challenging time, midlife crisis, if you will. And so I started actually doing an active Bible study on my own, looking through the Bible and finding everything that I could find about talents and what we were made to do. And one of the things that came out of that was that I went on a mission trip down to Honduras.
Oh, interesting.
And I was walking across the compound of where we were working one morning, and this gentleman by the name of Jim is walking towards me, and he's got boots, he's been out in the barn working, and he's got cow manure up to his knees, he's got grease up to his elbows because he's been working on a tractor. And here comes this guy, he's a missionary.
Right.
And it was one of those aha moments. And all of a sudden I realized, you can do anything and still have a mission.
Amen.
One of the things that I did do, I'm in the United Methodist Church,
Right.
and we have a program called Certified Lay Speaker. It has now been changed, I think it's called Certified Lay Servant. But as a result of that, every 2 years I have to take a continuing education course, which is a 6-week class. And one of them was called, I don't remember the actual title, but the substance of it was Lifestyle Evangelism. And there again, it was one of those aha moments where you don't have to go out and be preaching every day, but you just live the Christian life, you live by your Christian principles,
Right.
and people will notice in a positive way, which is really why I'm here today, because somebody noticed something different. I don't know whether they knew that I was a Christian or not, but they noticed something different about the way I handled myself in business.
And I know also you extended that into ministry as well, because you're able to do both. You're a trustee at your church, youth
Yes.
director, your Sunday school superintendent for a while there. You know, these are things that you can do while you're still running your career.
Absolutely. My largest outside of the church is I've been involved with Boy Scouts. Pretty much all my life, but more so after my own two sons got involved. And even after they were out of it, I continued on at a training level. And I've always been involved in that one of my missions. I feel that as Christians we need to have our own personal missions, and that's been one of them.
And it's so important. But I know, you know, it's funny because I was reading a book recently by Tim Keller that talked about the word vocation. And the root of it in Greek is vocation, means calling. And we even use words like labor today as scriptural words. That's a word that's out of the Bible, labor. And we use that to describe our work. And if we're called to the work that we do, if we're called to the profession, no matter how much it pays or where you do it or how dirty your hands get or don't get, that's when you glorify God in it, and you can get the most reward. Steve, I want to thank you for coming in today. We're out of time, but it was great having you. Welcome again to Tandem Radio. It's good to have you listening. This is Glenn DeLakin, your host here every Saturday morning at 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. Thank you for Vicky, our producer, pulling it all together. And Cooper was here today pulling together his Ask Tandem shows. You'll see those online. Don't forget, go to YouTube, check out Ask Tandem, and you'll see Cooper Ford and so much more going on there with Tandem. Tandem Radio, the good news on business here every Saturday morning at 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. Also at tandemradio.com. God bless. Have a great week.